3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to the God is Awesome podcast. My name is Aaron Mamuyak, and I will be your host today. And on this podcast, we interview real Christians, true stories for their testimony in God's life, or in God in their lives, rather, and just seeing how God has worked with them and worked in their lives and kind of sustained them through their ups and downs. Today, we have Bri Trudeau. Brittney, say what's up to everybody.
Hi, what's up?
We're super glad to have you, Brittney. But before I kick it over to you, I just want to go over kind of the housekeeping rules. This is like her testimony. This is a real story. So if you are with us, please give her some support, show her some love in the comments and the likes if you're on Facebook Live. If you're listening to this on podcast, iTunes, all the platforms, we want to thank you for joining us. If you found this testimony beneficial for you or touching to you or something, it might speak to someone else in their situations, please share it. We're not trying to be like famous, but it's just a way to encourage others. This is what the church is about. We're here to support each other and grow. And one of the ways we do that is through our testimony. It's kind of like holy ground. You know, God has been here. He has walked in Brittney's history. And so we're just kind of reflecting on that and praising God for it. Anyway, Brittney, again, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to kick it over to you. Give us like your origin story of how you grew up. We've got some things to talk about here, but we want to know like what your childhood was like and your home life getting into when you became a Christian.
Okay, so my childhood and growing up, I kind of always grew up in church, actually. It was pretty good. My parents had brought me up there my whole life. I went to church every Sunday. I was involved in all the kids groups that you could think of, Awana, Sunday school, everything. That was just part of life and a part of who I was and who my family was. I mean, I had my faith, and I thought for a long time it was my own, and it was there for a while. But I really hadn't found it until my later years.
What do you mean found it?
Like, I really hadn't found my own faith. It was almost like it was something that was instilled in my head. Obviously, okay, so you go to school, things are instilled in your head. So I hadn't really like realized that it was my own until later on in life.
Okay. And so how much later? What are we talking? What's the years here?
About my teen years.
Okay.
I mean, I asked Jesus into my heart when I was a little girl. I was like 6, I think. And I was starting to understand then. But again, it was still something that I had just always known because I was always brought up in church. So it was about my teen years. I think I was like 16. I went to a summer camp, a church summer camp. And I was prayed over and prophesied over. And that's when I really found that it was my own faith and not just something that I was, taught from when I was little.
Yeah, it moved kind of from your head to your heart and then developing like relationship with Jesus and all that.
Yeah, everything kind of just connected then.
Cool. And so that was a camp. So what happens after 16? Where do you go from there? You're a Christian now?
Well, when I was 16, I kind of rebelled. I came home from camp with the pastor's son as my boyfriend.
Oh, camp was good for you.
Yeah, so I mean, I went to camp and I found Jesus and I found a boyfriend.
Okay, kind of coincides.
And I wasn't supposed to have a boyfriend.
So it's secret. Okay.
Yeah, my parents had always told me, no dating, no boyfriends, blah, blah. That's kind of when I was like, I'm going to touch the waters a little bit and become rebellious. But I didn't really. So it was just
So you become saved, you start to develop a relationship with Jesus. And then you start to develop a relationship with the pastor's son.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of cool. I mean, like you rebel and you
dated.
Yeah. Okay. So where does that take? Did you get punished for that? Were your parents upset about that?
I was supposed to take the church bus home. And I didn't. I ended up riding in the car with just the pastor's son. He drove me home.
Oh,
so I got in trouble. I got in some serious trouble.
You were in the emotions, man. So you know what it is? Church camp is like a magic time. Like things just happen there. It's like, I don't know what happens. I have a saying like whenever we go on mission trips, it's not a real mission trip until love happens. It's
Whether
just what
it's love with God or
yeah,
somebody else.
it's just what happens. I don't know. I can't explain it. So where does that take you?
Okay, so after that, I mean, I dated that guy for a little while and whatever, and it was weird. And
First boyfriend ended normal.
yeah,
Okay,
first boyfriends are always awkward.
sure.
Um, and then I was fine. I still didn't like. I was a good kid. I finished out my high school years. I was a dancer. I did ballet. I
Mhm.
concentrated on all that. I turned 18, and that's when I that's when things kind of started to get a little rocky.
Okay.
I was taught my whole life, wait till marriage, wait till marriage, wait till marriage. Save yourself. And I didn't. I had a boyfriend at that time, and I had decided that I was just going to not listen to anything I was ever taught. And I had lost my virginity with him.
Mhm.
And it was it was one of those life-changing pivotal moments in a bad way,
Okay.
where you kind of I fell into a really, really deep depression. After that, I told my mom we were actually away on a women's retreat. I don't know if you ever remember hearing about like the women of faith retreats and stuff
Yeah.
that women went to. Yeah, so we were actually away on that, and we were in the car coming back to the hotel that night, and I had broke down crying after something that had been taught that night. And I finally told her, and in my head I'm thinking this is the best time to tell her because we're around everybody and she can't kill me. She can't kill me now because we are away at a
Uh-huh.
hotel with a bunch of women, and she can't blow up and get mad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I still was expecting her to, and so I told her, and my mom just handled it with so much grace and so much love,
Wow.
and not so much towards him, but
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
but she handled it with so much grace and so much love. And I still, even though she handled it that way, I still was very hard on myself, and I fell into like this deep that I colored my hair. I was blonde for the longest time, and I went and colored my hair because I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I chopped my hair
Oh.
off. Like I went real short with my hair because it was to the point where I just couldn't look at myself in the mirror because I knew what I was doing and
Mm.
what I had done wasn't right.
Wow. So okay. So when you lost your virginity to him and you had sex, how long was the time period before you told it to your mom and confessed, basically?
Um, a few months.
Okay. So you were living with shame and hiding it and guilt for those 2 months,
Yeah.
and then women's conference hit, and whatever was talked about was talked about, and it spurred something in you. And given the circumstances, opportunity's right. It's eating me up inside, and so I'm going to tell my mom.
Yeah.
And so, what was the fallout? Like, how did you feel? And I know you said you still cut your hair, and you still feel you were more hard on yourself than your mom was. But like, walk me through, like internally, emotionally, what was going on in your life? Was it shame? Because I assume this is the same case for a lot of young ladies out there too.
Um, it was shame and disgust. Like I was like, now nobody is ever gonna, and I should have like kept going with this feeling, after that, and like not made any more mistakes the rest of my life. But I'm human, and apparently I loved making mistakes.
Yeah, for
And
sure. You
so I mean, it was a lot of shame and disgust. Like I just felt like, all right, I'm not worthy of anything. God is gonna be so mad at me. What did I
Mm.
do? I screwed up, and it was just a lot of that at that time in my life.
Yeah. So I mean, and that kind of is because you had such a long history of church, right? And
Yeah.
like morality taught to you that hey, wait till marriage, and then
Yeah.
you didn't, and then it's like you failed all those years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow. So walk us through the other mistakes that you've been through that was
Yes.
there for you. And like awesome of your mom to like really show grace in that time. Like God is awesome in that moment.
Seriously.
Yeah.
She showed it. I mean, we've had our ups and downs, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
And there'll be a lot more you'll hear about. But
Sure. Let's get into it.
she's always had grace. Thank God if it wasn't for her.
Yeah. That's awesome. So walk us through the next couple of big mistakes in your life.
Okay, so I was fine. Like after that, I mean, I didn't even, after that, I got back on the right track. I was doing really, really
Oh,
good.
great.
Yeah, I was doing
Cool.
really, really well. I didn't even drink on my 21st birthday. Like I was like that straight edge after that. Like
Yeah.
I was
Let your hair grow back
so,
out, go back
yeah,
blonde or something.
yeah,
Okay.
I was just so, I was into it. Like I was like, all right, I'm doing good. I was very straight edged. I didn't you
Real
know,
quick, was the healing process like it was a big process, right? It didn't kind of happen overnight, but like you had this reaction and this physical reaction because you were disgusted with yourself. Then the healing came out just through a progression.
through a progression, but with that one, it was very short period of
Okay.
time because I kind of, it was a one time thing. It wasn't like we
Gotcha.
kept sleeping together or anything like
Okay.
that. It was a one time thing, and I knew right away like the healing process was a lot shorter with that.
Gotcha. Okay.
It
So
was
you're
rough, and it was, by all means, it was rough, and it wasn't anything that I would ever say I would ever like discount. Like, no, it wasn't bad or anything like that. No, it was rough. Like I couldn't look myself in the mirror. There was a time where in that healing process that I knew how I was going to heal myself, and I was going to do it, but I was too scared.
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So
So you're fully healed now, or at least healing on your way, straight edge. What happened?
okay, so then come my late after my 21st birthday, a few months, so it was about a few months, I think it was about a few months after my 21st birthday, I had met who is now my ex-husband. He was actually a waiter at the Sunny's restaurant, and that's how I met him. I was out to dinner with my mom and my aunt, and he was my waiter.
Oh, drop a
Yeah.
number, drop a tip.
Yeah. So if we're gonna be real here, I mean, I might as well just tell all. He was my waiter, and I was like, oh, he's so cute.
So what happened?
So then he got my number, I got his, we exchanged numbers, whatever. He called me that night, and he was so nice, so like, oh, you're a Christian, God is my everything, God is number one, la 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 la. Like he was just one of those, you know, like the snake in the
Mm,
Garden of Eden.
okay.
I mean,
Spout,
he,
spouting it off.
yeah, yeah, he's very good at that.
Hmm.
And so it just like we hit it off, and I was like, oh, mom, he's perfect, la la la. But here's the thing, he just got out of rehab,
Hmm.
and he had just gotten out of rehab. And so my mom's like, red flag goes off in your mother's head, you should listen.
Sure.
And even when your dad says, I don't think that's a good idea, well, I decided that I was just going to do whatever I wanted
Hmm.
at that point. And I was like, you know what, I'm an adult, I can do whatever I want, I can make my own choices. It went downhill really fast.
Yeah.
I started hanging out with him a lot, and I realized that he had no intention of church or God or anything. And being a new recovering addict, I didn't realize at that time that he wasn't supposed to even have a relationship with anybody like that.
Yeah, that's what I thought because correct me if I'm wrong, people out of rehab, right? They've already coming in with like a whole bunch of baggage that they got to deal with themselves and some
Yeah.
kind of identity stuff. And it's hard. Like they're working to get themselves like out of that addictive phase in their life. So
Mm-hmm.
then to add on into a relationship, it's like more added baggage. So it's not like people out of rehab are bad, but that they're just dealing with a lot. And
Yeah. Their
it's like
mind is not there yet.
it's like just adding more to something that you've already got a full plate on.
Yeah.
So you decided to rebel.
Oh, big time.
Okay.
And so I decided that I was just going to start not coming home at night. And I was just going to stay at his house where he was staying. He was renting from a lady that he had gotten out of the halfway house and rented a room from a lady across the street from his halfway house. And she was an addict or a recovering addict or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just total chaos really, really quickly, to the point where one day I had gotten into a huge argument with my mom. And I packed all of my stuff, every single thing in my bedroom, and into my car, and I left. And I didn't come back. And I didn't know where I was going. I went to his house where he was renting a room from, and I'd stay there, or I'd go to my friend's house and I'd stay there, or I'd go park at the beach and I'd stay there for a little while. I never stayed at the beach long. I was always too scared. But I was always afraid someone was going to break into my car. And I ended up not living with him at that time. I would just stay at his house because the lady he was renting from, didn't really want me staying there. And so I rented a room from a friend of mine, and it ended up not being a room. We ended up sharing a bedroom, her and I, because she didn't have a big house, and she had a little boy, so she didn't have a big house or anything. And so it was just total. I was just living wherever on couches and stuff, and living out of my car.
Very unstable.
At that point.
Unstable lifestyle right there.
Yeah. And so that's when it started. I had obviously started having sex again, and I didn't care about anything. I didn't go to church. I completely disowned my parents. I thought that they were totally against me.
Yeah.
When really they were just against the choices I was making at that point.
Sure. And it's funny how sin separates you from all of that community around you, your parents, your family, the church that's been there for you. So
yeah, so I ended up moving in with him. He moved out. He was getting kicked out of the lady's house that he was in because he started doing drugs again, and she found out. And at that point I had not tried anything. So he got kicked out of there, and he had no money. I had no money. I was working, but I still had no money because, what kind of job as a waitress really provides enough for you to do what you need to do? Sure. And especially if you're living in an unstable relationship or unstable places where you don't know. Yeah. So he got kicked out because he was using again. And because he had done this movie. We were both in the movie. I was just an extra. But the movie was about it had drugs in it. It was about drugs and stuff. And so that kind of was a trigger in an addict's mind to, I'm gonna start doing drugs again, even though they weren't real in the movie. And so it was that kind of lifestyle too, by the way. The whole Hollywood movie lifestyle is not glamorous. Yeah. But, so did you start using with them, or how did that move into drugs and a marriage? Okay, so I started using. I decided that I was going to try. We had moved to a place in Port St. Lucie together, a little cottage we had rented from some elderly couple. And that ended up really weird. Because he's very, okay, without being so mean, because I'm trying not to be too mean, without being so mean, he's a little weird. And he believes in he thinks that the place was haunted that we were living in. Okay. And now don't discredit me if anybody's listening and they believe in that kind of stuff, because hey, spiritual warfare is real. Sure. But he believed that it was being haunted. I don't even know how he explained it, but okay. I think he was just high. Okay. And so we moved out of there because that was just chaotic. He's like, no, it's being haunted, la la la. Yeah. So were you using at this time? I was. At that time, I started deciding that I was going to experiment with him, and we were smoking weed, and it's the stuff that they used to call spice, the synthetic weed, which is really, really bad for you. And I had started using that, and I just was like, I like the feeling, but I didn't like the feeling. Okay. And so I just kept using it because it was fun. And
Did
I
you go
wouldn't.
into anything stronger?
I wouldn't because I was too afraid.
Got
But the synthetic weed was. It was. I mean, that kind of stuff is pretty.
Will mess you up.
Yeah, it's not like. It's just very. You don't even know if it's laced with anything or not. I swear that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you, so were you married at this time or did you get married?
No, we weren't even married then. At that time, we were just still living together, playing house.
Sure.
Also, so when we did move into that place, I was working two jobs,
Hmm.
driving back and forth. He decided that this is when things got really bad. He started to get really abusive at this time, more so verbally at this time. And he would get frustrated because he was using again. So the whole user mentality and like it was just chaotic. We lived in a dirty situation. Like not, everything was messy. Everything was dirty. There was drug remnants all over the table all the time, all over the kitchen table.
What do you mean by mentally abusive?
Um, so mentally and verbally, he would constantly down me and curse at me, and um, it was just call me names. And at that point, it wasn't too bad. At that point, it was still mild, and we were still in the fun part of our relationship. Fun, if you want to call it.
Sure.
Um, and but we had no money. We had
Okay.
no money. I was working two jobs. I was the only one working. He said he was working, but I'd come home and he would never be. We had one car. So how are you working? So I shopped at the dollar store a
Hmm.
lot for food and stuff because I wasn't talking to my parents. He was talking to his, but that's because they were naive and jaded, as they didn't believe anything that was wrong with him. They thought he was great. He went through rehab. He was doing
Sure.
so good. La la la.
Yeah. So you were working two jobs and shopping at dollar stores and he was just using and staying at home.
Hmm.
And so what why did you do that? Like why did you stay? What was your mentality?
So I stayed because it wasn't as rough then. It wasn't rough, and I was happy, or so I thought. I was
Okay.
happy. I thought that's what happiness was in a relationship. This was the first real relationship
Mm,
where I felt like an adult. I felt like, oh, I'm living with the guy. I'm an adult. I can do what I want. This is a real relationship,
sure.
or what I thought was a real relationship.
And did anyone try to speak to you? Like speak truth into your life and
Actually, there was at that time my parents were trying really, really hard, but I wasn't listening to them.
mm,
I didn't want to have anything to do with my parents. There was one a friend of mine that her name is Bruna. I will throw out her name because she helped. She like tried to speak so much truth into my life, and I just threw it down the toilet.
mm,
Um, I was working for her at the time. I was teaching dance for her, and she kept trying and trying and trying, and no matter how hard she tried, I just shot it down the toilet. I shot her down the toilet. I literally walked out on the job and didn't come back. And like I lost that job because I was so irresponsible and so stupid, and so like she believed in me so much. Like
yeah.
she was like another parent, but
Mhm.
she was more my age, like not
Yeah.
so she was like an older sister. And she tried and tried and tried and never stopped. And but I just kept shooting it down.
It's crazy how we get like that, right? It's just crazy.
I can't even believe it thinking about it today. Like she just tried so hard and I just shot it down. I walked out. I walked out on her twice. And
Gosh.
yeah, I was
Jeez.
terrible. It
So
was
what
terrible.
so what made you marry him?
Okay, so we moved out of that place and we lived on a couch for a couple nights until we got another place in downtown West Palm Beach. Okay, so I don't know if you've ever been like to City Place, downtown West Palm Beach area.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so there's this little green apartment building that looks like a little green trash building. And one of the side streets in like right behind City Place.
Yeah, yeah. City Place is nice, but outside, just outside is like, I don't want to go there.
Yeah, right behind it, like two streets behind it, over the train tracks and two streets behind
Okay.
is where this was. It was like right next to like the Trump Towers and like right in between City Place. So like right in that little sandwich area.
Uh-huh.
Um, we lived there. And everybody that lived in that building, I swear, did drugs.
Oh man.
It was horrible. It was a trash house or a crack house,
Sure.
if you want to call it that. We lived there and we never paid rent. We couldn't pay rent. We lived there like squatters, basically,
Oh man.
until we got evicted. But in between the time that we were living there and got evicted, we were still using. Things were chaotic. We had no money, and when we did have money, it was tell me to hand it over so he could go buy his fix.
Oh man.
And I ended up getting pregnant. That's where I ended up getting pregnant, and I had gotten into a huge fight with him, and I called my mom, and I ended up getting into a huge fight with her somehow. And then in the middle of the fight, I was like, "By the way, I'm pregnant," and I hung up the phone. Yeah.
Man.
What a way to tell your mom, right?
I know. That's pretty brazen.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way,
congratulations, Grandma.
Yeah. So she called me back, and she was like, "You have to calm down. You have to relax. You can't stress yourself. Are you telling the truth?" And I was like, "Yes, I am." And she just, in that moment, showed so much grace and so much of Jesus. And this whole time, I was just being such a butthead.
Yeah.
And she's like, "You have to calm down and you have to just relax." And so we got into the doctor. I was under my parents' insurance still, which meant that I had great insurance coverage for having a baby. And so we went to the doctor. She came down to visit all the time and would feed me because I didn't have any food.
Oh man.
She still didn't know what was going on though behind the scenes. I had stopped. Okay, so the night before I found out I was pregnant, I was so messed up. It was New Year's Day when I found out I was pregnant. I decided I was going to take a pregnancy test. And the night before, I was working at this restaurant in City Place called Mojitos. And so the night before was New Year's Eve, and I was so wasted. So bad. I could barely walk home. And I got up the next day and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to take a pregnancy test." Yeah, what? And, and so that's when I found out I was pregnant. So I was like, "Oh my God, I've been doing all this stuff and I'm pregnant."
Wow.
So I was freaking out because I thought something was going to be wrong with the baby. And so.
Did you clean up after that, or was there like
it was easy for me. I was done.
Maternal instincts kicked in, huh?
Fast. Now, some moms, I know that, like, there's some people who have done drugs and stuff that they don't, and that's something that is hard for them. But I don't have that sort of addictive personality. I guess it's not as strong as some people's.
Sure, but your love for your child outpaced your love for or your desire to be high.
Exactly. It was like a switch flipped in my head.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my God, this is it."
Sure.
And it was weird because I wasn't expecting it to be like that.
Okay.
I've never been pregnant before. I've never had a kid before that. And I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And it was like in an instant.
Yeah. And so did that cause you to want to be married?
So that I was like, what are we going to do? We don't have any money. We were getting evicted. And I was like, this is not good. And he's like, "Oh, we should get married." And I was like, "Well, we should, yeah." And so I kept pushing the situation. I pushed it. And I think he really only married me because I pushed the situation because I felt like it was the right thing to do.
That's rough. That's a rough thing.
Yeah. So, still things weren't so bad. Like, we were fighting a lot after that. We had fought. There was a time where felt like I was brave enough to leave the relationship. And I had packed all my stuff in my car and I was going to leave. And he comes out and the usual again, "I'm really sorry. I'll never do that again. Please come back." Because people have asked me before, why would you stay in a relationship like that? And I'm like, because when you're in a relationship like that and people when they come to you and they're like, I'm so sorry, it'll never happen again, and you get flowers the next day.
Sure.
But he gave you flowers. And so I was like, he gave me flowers, and I stay because, you know, he loves me and he cares about me, and he brought me flowers the next day because he was really sorry.
Yeah.
Which, that was the mentality. Like, that was the mentality. I'm never going to find anybody else. I'm pregnant and I'm not married.
Wow. So
I've
you
been
really,
so messed up.
you thought you'd never find anyone else.
Yeah. I was
And
like,
you're clinging on to this hope. So it's out of like, there's one side, there's this desperation, right? You don't think you'll ever find someone else. And the other side, hey, there's hope for this marriage or this relationship and marriage still.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone who might be in a, you know, an abusive relationship that has these ups and downs, like real low lows, and then tries to cover it up really quick, but then just another drop? What would you say to someone in that
There's
relationship?
hope. Like,
Yeah.
there's hope. There is never a time where God has not already had something else better for you.
Mm.
That even though you think what you think now, that you're never going to find anybody else. You're not good enough. Who's going to want somebody with a kid already? Nobody's going to want me because I have a kid. That is so not true.
So there's a loss of value in yourself, right? Like self-worth, self-value.
Huge. There was a huge, like, I just felt worthless. I felt like I will never be good enough for the right guy, for a guy who is a God-fearing guy who loves God,
Yeah.
you know, I will never be good enough now.
Uh,
Who's
uh,
gonna want that?
that's harsh. That hurts. You know, like who's gonna love me if like what decent guy is gonna love me? And that's the kind of things that you struggle with internally. That's crazy.
I mean, yeah, because if you think about it, I I I was doing drugs. I was drinking a lot. I was having sex before marriage. I was pregnant now. Like, I'm used. That's how I felt. I was used.
Wow.
I was a used piece of trash, and I wasn't worthy of anything else. I had either chalked it up to I was going to be married to this guy the rest of my life and just deal with it, or I was going to be a single mom the rest of my life, because nobody's ever going to want that.
It wasn't a person. You weren't a person who made mistakes and has a history, but you were a thing that was used and just should be.
Yeah.
It felt like, wow.
Yeah.
That's deep insight. That's deep
So,
insight. So how'd you get out of it then?
Well, we moved to a different place. After that, we had decided that we were going to get married. He proposed to me, with, I call it a cereal box ring. It, he proposed to me after work one night. We ended up working at the same restaurant after that. We were both servers, and he proposed to me, and he promised me that he was going to love me forever and everything was going to change. And we were going to be together and we were going to raise our child together. And so we moved into another place in West Palm, and in the ghetto. But we lived at his parents for a little while before that because we had no place to go. So we had lived at his parents' house. I still wasn't really communicating much with my parents except for about the baby. My mom would come and she'd still I was still such a brat. And she'd still show so much grace. Like, she'd come to the doctor's appointments and everything, and I continued to be a brat.
Sure.
But and so then we moved to the apartment, or the duplex, wherever we lived at. The duplex, yeah. And wedding time came around, like time to plan my wedding came around, and my mom was like, "You don't have to do this." She's like, "I don't care what I have taught you your entire life about being married and having a kid and whatever, and being pregnant and having a kid." She's like, "You do not have to marry him." And for my mom to say that, like, my mom she's by the book. Like, you be married, you're pregnant, you have your babies, you're married. And for her to say that, and for her to show me that much grace and like pretty much beg me not to marry him, I should have listened. I should have listened, because that's not something my mom would normally say.
Sure.
And so I should have listened, but I insisted to her. I was like, "No, it's okay. We're doing really good. I'm gonna marry him. We're gonna have a happy family." It's all right. And all this time deep down inside, I'm hiding everything. I'm hiding the fact that he's still doing drugs. I'm hiding the fact that I'm being verbally abused. And at this point it had gotten partially physical. Like he would throw glasses at me, like glass cups, and like, yeah, like in my direction. It never really hit me, but it was in my direction.
Sure.
So it could have hit me, but
Yeah.
I mean, it was just at that point things were really chaotic, and this whole time I'm like, no, everything's fine. I'm hiding it.
You put up a facade to show like it's not as bad as it looks like.
Yeah, I'm pregnant and I'm happy and we're getting married. Like, it's okay.
You think that's like a pride issue? You know, like, hey, you know, I still got it a little bit. Like I could still take care of everything.
It was,
Yeah.
and I was terrified also. I was afraid of what he was going to do, and I was
Oh.
afraid of now the fact that I have this little life and what's going to happen if I screw it up and I don't, this little life doesn't have a family.
Oh, yeah. You thought that
So,
would be what's best for your little one is that they have a father, his father or her father
yeah.
or his father. Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up getting married. We went on our honeymoon, and we went to Disney, and yeah. And I was pregnant, obviously, and so I didn't do much, and it was kind of a miserable. I love Disney, and mind you, I'm there all the time, but I've never had more of a miserable time in Disney
Oh man.
than I did then. Disney is supposed to be the happiest place on earth, and I was so miserable. He had promised me, I'm going to stop the drugs. I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop. He brought them with him.
Oh man.
On our honeymoon. And I was like, you're not really going to change, are you? And so then things just went downhill continuously. Like, that was the most miserable week of my life. We came home to a duplex with a roof that fell in because it rained so much that I guess some part of the roof leaked, and it fell in. So they came and fixed it. We weren't paying the rent there. Still, we had no money. We spent all of our wedding money on back rent that we owed. So we didn't even get to buy anything. You know how you get wedding money after your wedding and it's so happy. And no, that was spent on drugs and back rent. So that we had a place to live So we had a place to live when we came home. Then we stopped paying our rent there. And we had zero. Like I was scraping pennies off of my car floor, like searching under the couch, literally searching under the couch or searching under the car for pennies to just go to the store, the corner store, and buy some clean water to drink.
That's tough. That's real tough.
And we didn't have like food stamps or anything either. We were just so dumb. I was so dumb. I was so dumb. And then one day we got into a really big fight, and he called me, I'm not going to say the word out loud because it's a terrible word, but he called me the C word. And we were driving in the car, and I'm in the passenger seat, and he called me that. That's like the most horrible word you could ever call a woman.
Sure.
Or anybody. And I reached over to him because he was screaming in my face while he's driving. I'm pregnant. Yeah. And he's screaming in my face while he's driving and calling me names and calling me that. I reached over after he called me that. I literally smacked him across the face. I've never hit anybody in my entire life like that, but I smacked him across the face. I don't know what came over me. And I mean, I can tell you what came over me. I was angry, and I was hurt, and I was like in shock. And so I smacked him across the face, and he went even more ballistic, like ape crazy, and calls my parents and says, I'm going to take her to jail. I'm going to drop her off at the jail, or I'm going to leave her on the side of the road. You need to come get her. You need to tell her. She just smacked me across the face. And they're like, well, what did you do?
Yeah.
And so that lasted for a few days. Like, we were just fighting really bad. He came into the bathroom the next day. We were still fighting, and he broke a glass frame over my head as I'm on the toilet, like, using the bathroom. So
What caused him to do that? Like,
because it was a picture of us, and he decided that he thought that it was gonna hurt my feelings. And
that's some WWE stuff, man. Just like, that's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. So that was like, that day was the final straw. He left me, like, we were moving out that day. Or maybe it was the next day that we were moving out. But whatever day we were moving out, because we were being evicted from that place too. That's 3 different places we got evicted from.
Sure.
Well, the first place we really didn't get evicted from, we left because he was cray-cray and he thought the place was so haunted.
Right.
So we were getting evicted from that place. It was either that day or the next day that we were moving out. And everything was packed into the U-Haul. I was supposed to go with him. We had a little dog, and so I was supposed to go with him. I was supposed to follow him in my car and go with him. Well, we were still fighting, and he drove away in the U-Haul, basically told me good riddance, and left me standing there. I was 6 months pregnant, left me standing there alone with nothing but my car and what was in my car.
Oh, man.
I had nothing. I had no money to my name. I had my car and the little bit that was in it. And he basically said good riddance, and he was gone. And I called my mom, and I was like, I couldn't even speak. I was like sobbing, and I'm like, I'm alone. I'm freaking out. And I'm 6 months pregnant at that point, standing in the middle of the ghetto with nothing. And so in a matter of, like, I think that her and my little brother, like, flew as fast as they could down there to me. And my little brother was driving at that point, so he was old enough to drive. And so he drove me. They came and got me. He drove my car with me in it, and my mom drove her car. And I was starving. Like, I was so hungry. I couldn't even concentrate on anything. I was a wreck. They took me to get something to eat. I had eaten a hamburger like a homeless person who hasn't eaten in days. And I went home with them. And again, another moment where my family and my mom and my dad has shown so much grace. They took me in, even though I was treating them like a butthead.
Yeah.
And took me back and made room for me, and gave me a bed to sleep in and everything. And I'd moved back in with them at that point.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. And that's insane, just to like keep pushing them away and keep like rebelling against them and just distancing yourself from them and choosing instead of them, supportive, loving family, grace-filled family, and choosing instead your own path, your own sin, your own way. And then for them to, like, at rock bottom, pull you out of that.
Yeah, it was bad. Like, before then, my mom would come over to the house, and I was still hiding the fact that he was doing drugs and stuff. And she'd come over to see if I was okay. She called it her well checks. When we lived in that one duplex, and she'd call them her well checks, and she'd come over, and I'd have to say, wait, let me go inside and make sure that, he's not naked or in his boxers or whatever. When really I was going inside to make sure that he wasn't strung over on the couch or his drugs weren't all over the dining room table.
Yeah.
And she would come over, and she'd like buy me groceries and stuff. And she's like, no, this is specifically for you. You need to eat.
Gotcha. Wow. So did recovery for you happen? Did, like, this progression of, hey, I hit rock bottom. Was that rock bottom? And
that was rock bottom there. That's where it started. It lasted a while. That's where it started. With them, I still tried to make it work with him. He lived with my family and I for like maybe a week, and couldn't after Max was born. And really he couldn't handle it. Like, he just was over it. He didn't like the fact that they didn't put up with his crap or anything like that. And so
Wow.
he moved out. And things got worse with us. And I finally decided one day, like, my grandmother was staying with my parents also at that time because she wanted to be there to help me out and everything. And I had the baby, and when I was at the hospital, he was there for the delivery, and then he left, and he didn't stay at all. Like, he didn't. My mom ended up staying the night with me. That's supposed to be a happy time.
Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't stay. He left. He was mad because my dad threatened him, supposedly.
Hmm.
So my mom stayed, and when the day that I went home from the hospital, he wasn't there. I went home with my mom and my brand new baby, and I
Wow.
started life. Um, I that was one of the hardest times of my life, was leaving the hospital and with just my mom and my baby.
Yeah.
And
Because you don't feel supported or loved by
yeah.
someone. Yeah.
And so I did it. I did it on my own with the help of my family and my grandmother for the longest time. It was hard though, because I spent nights and days just sobbing. I couldn't stop. I just cried and cried and cried and wanted to know what I was doing wrong and why I deserved that. And I thought I deserved it because of the mistakes that I had made and the choices that I made. And that's why I was in the situation I was in, where he didn't love me and he was only married to me because he thought it was the right thing to do.
Mm.
And he loved his drug more. And I cried and cried and cried, and he fought me all the time. And I mean, to this day, I still deal with him trying to fight me on things and
Mm.
like bringing up the past. And I'm like, dude, it's not about us.
Yeah.
But so things progressively started to get better. I we got divorced. I finally decided one day, I woke up and I was like, it's time.
Yeah.
I'm ready for a divorce. I'm ready to make that step. So I made that step. I filed. I was the one that filed. I made that step. I did it. We got it over with. Divorces are dirty.
Mm-hmm.
They're dirty. And it was dirty because he fought because he wanted the TV. And so the TV and the dog, it wasn't even so much about having the kid.
Sure. Must be a nice TV.
Yeah, right. And so we ended up getting a divorce, and the way it was set up at the time is that he would get visitation with Max because Max didn't really know him.
Mm.
He had the chance to come see him all the time, and he wouldn't, because he said, I'm not coming to visit because it's at your parents' house.
Yeah.
So Max didn't really know him, so he had visitation with me around, or 2-hour visitations where he could take him by himself and stuff. And then it became the time where Max could go there like every other weekend and stuff when Max got older. And things progressively started to get better for me. I
Slow.
still,
Is it slow? Is it still slow? Is it painful? Is it?
it was really slow.
Yeah.
It was the most painful, slow progression I had ever felt in my entire life.
Healing turns out like that. Healing is it's slow and it's deliberate.
I
And
didn't think this was ever going to end.
yeah.
It was worse than what I felt when I was 18.
Wow. Yeah, for sure.
And I thought that this was it. This was the point in my life where I wasn't going to make it out of it. Like, I had made it out of the depression, and I had made it out of, and I healed from when I was younger. And this was the point in my life where I'm like, all right, this is the time. I'm not going to make it out of this one. I'm going to remain feeling like this for the rest of my life. I had felt so worthless. I felt like I was never, ever going to meet anyone again. I was not going to ever get married again. Who's going to want someone who's now divorced?
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
I was young. I was divorced. Guys don't want that. Like, that's not what they want.
Yeah.
And so I the progression was just beyond slow.
But you're married now and you have kids, and
I am. Between that, though, I decided to be dumb again because I still decided that I hadn't fully found myself. And what I did, I ended up relying on, I wasn't really dumb. I just ended up relying on the fact that, oh, somebody does want to date me. And so I had gotten a boyfriend, and it's actually somebody that I had known from youth group when I was a kid.
Sure.
And it was actually my old youth pastor, his son. And we started dating. And the guy, he wasn't the guy that just recently gone through a divorce. That's why it's okay for him, because that's why he wants me, he'll marry me, or he'll be with me because, he's been through a divorce. It's okay. Good guy. I have nothing bad to say about him. He just wasn't the right guy.
Right.
I was working. I was a single mom at that point. We had broken up, and I met this guy that at the gym that I worked at, and we had started hanging out and stuff. And I decided that, it was time to move out of my parents' house. I was going to rent a room for my friend and her boyfriend. And it got a little rocky again with my parents because I still wasn't fully healed. And I thought I was. I thought I was fine. Everything was great. When really I didn't realize how much I had buried down. And mind you, I had been through tons of therapy. I had to go see a therapist and a counselor because I didn't know how to handle myself, and I don't know how to handle life.
Sure.
And so I'd been through tons of therapy and everything, tons of counseling, and I thought I was fine. When really deep down inside, I didn't realize how deep I had it buried.
Yeah. Lying to yourself type of thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, to lie to myself I'm fine now. I'm fine. I buried it down so deep that I was like, everything's good now. I'm good. I'm solid. And I ended up relying on this guy again. And I was like, oh, he's so nice. I ended up moving out. And it just, I ended up moving back in with my parents after that again, because it was dumb to even like get into a relationship with him.
Yeah.
And I just did it because I wanted to feel some sort of worth.
Sure. And you had all this, like before, like there's all this baggage that you carry into a new relationship that you need to deal with yourself, but then you just add another relationship on top of it. And then
I kind of kept just piling it on. And I didn't realize how far I was burying everything because I kept piling things on.
Yeah.
And so after that, I had ended up moving back in with my parents, and I ended up meeting. Well, actually, okay. I was still living at my friend's house when I had I didn't even meet him. Okay. My husband now, we have actually known each other since we were little kids. We were homeschooled our entire lives together in the same homeschool group. Actually, the one that our son is in now. And he was 4 years younger than me. He was friends with my little brother. So I didn't pay two minds to him growing up.
Yeah.
And we actually ran into each other after church one night. I was at church with my family one Saturday night. And this is, again, when I had everything under control finally. And I thought that I did. We were, after church, we all went to dinner afterwards. And we went to that burger place that was there on the boulevard. Now it's gone. Was there for a short period of time. Okay. So we went there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Ryan. And so it was funny because we never talked. I've never hugged the dude in my entire life. And so we walk in, and I'm like, oh, hey guys, what's up? Because I had known some of the guys he was with too, because we'd all been in the same homeschool group. And so everybody got up and said hi. We all hugged each other, and Ryan was like, he pushed one of his friends out of the way to give me a hug, and he's like, hey, how are you? And I was like, hi, how are you? It was just really weird. So they leave, and I go to my mom, and I was like, Mom, he grew up. And so I stalked him on not on Facebook, on Instagram.
Sure.
And he tells me the next day we started talking, and he's like, yeah, Alex told me not to, he said you were crazy. Everybody said you were crazy growing up. I was like, I was. But we started talking and hanging out, and actually he was the first guy to ever show me that I was worth, like, after all the chaos. He was the first guy after all the chaos to ever show me that I was worth it after all that. And I mean, because the two guys I dated afterwards, they were, like I said, nice guys. They didn't really show me I was worth it. They kind of like took advantage of the situation and decided that, oh, she's got a kid, she's married, she'll have sex with me.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan was the first guy to show me that after that I was worth more than just that. And I had decided that I mean, because these other guys just wanted sex, so maybe that's just what he wants. And I was like, oh, come hang out. I tried to seduce him, and he completely denied me, shot me down. And I thought something was wrong with me.
Wow, MVP right there.
Everything came rolling back into my head. Oh my God, there's something wrong with me. I knew it. I knew I wasn't worth a good guy. I knew that, like, everything just started rushing back, and I started crying in front of him. Mind you, this was the first night we hung out. And I started crying, and he's like, what's wrong? Why are you crying? I'm like, thank you. No one's ever said that before. Like, I lost it. I was like, no one's ever shown me, like, that I was worth it before.
Because
I didn't know I had that buried.
Because that's all you knew, right? That's how you knew how to express love or affection towards someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I didn't know that I had all that buried inside me, and I started crying. And I'm like, why am I crying? What is wrong with me?
Yeah.
And I like thanked him. I'm like, thank you for saying no. And we ended up, like, just having coffee and talking all night long. And he's a police officer, and so we talked about his job, because my dad was growing up, my dad was a police officer my whole life. So I could relate.
Yeah.
In, like, we talked about his job, and we talked about, like, everything we could think of. Like, we just caught up from childhood.
Yeah.
And we kind of just hit it off from there. I'd moved back in with my parents, and it's almost like the whole healing process began again after that night.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now you have kids, you're married.
Kids, married. When we started dating, Max was 1.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And Max has always been with me more. He's with his biological father every other weekend, sometimes.
Yeah.
And it depends on when he decides to take him.
But your kids are now, like, in or what was it, homeschooled, the same homeschool group?
Yeah, we have a 5-year-old. We have Max. We have Maddie, who is 2, and we have Tilly, who is 3 months.
Oh man.
So they're homeschooled. Max and Maddie are through the same homeschool group. We got married, and I guess to take away from all of this, I could say that just because, like, if you make mistakes like that, okay, so just because you start the healing process doesn't mean that it doesn't haunt you and follow you into your current marriage.
Yeah.
Like, it's taken up until last year for me to truly be okay with myself and heal.
Sure.
It caused a lot of marital issues between Ryan and I, to the point where
there's no time limit on healing. There's no time expectation to heal. Like, you have this many years to heal. Like, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it caused a lot of marital issues, like a lot of trust issues. Yeah. I had bad trust issues. I was constantly accusing him of cheating and accusing him of, like, oh, you don't want to be with me. And sure. I always constantly, like, what is the forecasted? Is that the word for it? On him, like that he was going to act like my ex-husband and he was going to leave me.
You were you were trying to project like what he.
That's what the word is,
Yeah.
projecting it.
Mm-hmm.
I was constantly doing that
Wow.
over and over and over again to this poor guy.
And that's
he
part of
eventually,
that's part of like that healing. Like you're just like, you don't know, and you're trying to put like the world back together in place, you know, for like a right vision of the world. It's just tough. It's tough.
I've never seen, besides my parents, I've never seen someone else show so much grace. He like stood by me through all my crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a God-fearing man too, right? Is he?
Absolutely.
Christian? Yeah. And that's the thing, man. These guys, your parents, your husband, all like infused with the Holy Spirit, all like know what grace is about in their lives and show it to you. And it's been a journey for you, and it'll still be a journey. It's not for anyone.
Yeah.
Let's close this off. I have two questions here. One, what do you have for advice for like an old or younger Brittney, or like someone who's in that chaos? What would you say to them? What would you want to have said to you? Probably you probably heard it, but it didn't register in here.
Really, when you're in a situation like that, no matter what anybody else says to you, it's very hard for it to register. But if I were to say something to someone who is in the same situation or is currently in the same situation, is that you got to listen to your heart. You have to listen to your own head and your own heart. And if you're in a situation like that, it's okay that there is light at the end of the tunnel and you can leave. Choose to leave. Mm-hmm. Don't choose to stick in it and continue to like drown in the mud.
Yeah. What about for someone who's healing? Like someone who's
healing?
Yeah, because healing was a struggle for you too. Like
healing begins when you learn to let yourself go, and it doesn't happen overnight. And when you're in a situation like that and when you're dealing with stuff, you have to be very careful, because it does carry on into future relationships or future marriage. And it does also, your consequences piggyback for the rest of your life. You deal with certain consequences. Like I have to deal with the fact that I now have to deal with my ex-husband for the rest of my life.
Sure.
Because he is Max's biological father. Now Max is not really a huge fan. Without going into like too many details about that, Max is not really a huge fan. To Max, Ryan is daddy since Max was 1.5 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And so you kind of have to deal with your consequences for the rest of your life. So really, really think about how you're going to start that healing process and really dive into it, knowing that it's not always going to be easy. And there will be times where you're going to fail. You're human, and you're going to have those moments of feeling like, why me? Why now? Why am I feeling this way? Everything's going to rush back at you at certain points. You're going to have flashbacks. It's like PTSD. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
But that healing does happen. And it might take a while, but you really, 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 really have to lean on your faith, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, your stories of like this young girl growing up in church and then rebelling, and it's kind of like a snowball effect of rebellion, and then like the healing process was really fascinating to listen to. It's like trying to, but like always falling back into the same routines. And God has always been there.
He's never left. And I thought he did. There was times where I thought he's gone. And why would he want to be with me? Like, why would God want to be around me? Why would God want to still keep holding me? Sure. I'm not making him happy. I'm not doing what he wants. I'm not following him. So he has every right to leave. But he wasn't. He wasn't there. Or he wasn't gone. He was there.
Yeah. And I love how you describe it. It's by using this repeated word like grace, right? Like this favor from God that you do not deserve, right? And it's complete, like over and over, it's been shown to you, and like your parents and your family and your husband now. Let me ask you.
That's the only way I can ever think of it to explain it is grace, because the grace I mean, there's no other word for it.
Yeah, and that's the perfect way to describe it. So let me ask you the last question. Let's we wrap up this interview, and this is what it's all about. Why do you think God is awesome?
Um, because I because he gave me a miracle in my little boy that I actually forgot. Okay, now I'm. He gave me a miracle in my little boy when I was going through all that, and on top of that, he had fluid on his brain while I was pregnant with him, and fluid on his kidneys, and I thought that I would have, when he was healed in the womb before I had him, he ended up being healed. There was nothing left.
Mm,
The fluid was gone. The fluid was gone off of his kidneys. The fluid was gone off of his brain. You think that would have clicked into my head that God's powerful and he can bring me through anything. And I still didn't click in my head until I look at the family that I have today. And I look where I'm at today and I reminisce on the past and where I was. And I look back at where I'm at today and I think that's why God's awesome.
yeah.
Because I was someone who didn't think that I would ever be where I'm at today.
Mm,
With a house, with kids, with more than one kid, with a husband who loves me with so much patience, and all of my crazy and all of my past and all of my everything and all of my crazy now, and just loves me and loves me like God would love me, and a family that loves me like God would love me. I mean, that's why I think God is awesome.
that's amazing, and that's what it's all about. That's like the true blue. That's why we share our testimonies. Thank you, Brittney, so much for sharing that with us. I know it was hard. I know there's like deep parts of that you like really dredge out. If you are listening here and you made it to the end, we just really want to thank you. We appreciate you walking this journey with us. This is, I think, Moses took off his sandals where God wanted him to walk because that's where God was. It was holy ground, and this was like a holy time of reflection in Brittney's life and how God has worked in her life. If you find her testimony to like speak to someone else or benefit someone else, please share it with them. Please invite them to the group. Please get them connected. I'm sure Brittney wouldn't object. If they're a mom who's young, Brittney has an awesome Facebook group of moms.
Yes.
She just started, and especially in the Port St. Lucie area, get connected with some of these people. It's more than just you don't really get the connection. You could hear her story here, but get connected, especially if you're listening to this anywhere, get connected to a church. That's what helped Brittney out of this kind of stuff, was people loving her, and especially her family, showing grace, showing God's love.
Yeah.
We really promote that here.
There's always people that'll love you through it. And I mean, I'm one of them. If somebody's listening that is going through that same thing, I will love you through it. And there's a group of moms that will love you through it. And I promise you, there's always support. You just have to like kind of want it.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll link that in the show notes. Anyway, guys, please share this with someone who you think would be beneficial of it. Brittney, thank you so much again. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
To the God is Awesome podcast. And next time.
Bye.